Okay, so Long's basically admitting that his version of TBLT isn't going to work everywhere. But our question is, does that mean you can't do TBLT if you're not in a well-funded institution with stable, qualified, experienced teaching staff, etc.? We think that you can still. Making compromises, yes, but respecting Long's basic principles. So let's look at some horses for courses. Starting at the top with the well-funded institutional courses that Long mentions and is heavily involved with. We think, of course, this is the ideal environment for Long's full TBLT. The next example he mentions are immigrant, refugee, ESL or ESOL programs. We think that Long's TBLT is possible given funding, given training, and other elements being in place. But certainly would be very well suited to this type of class, given that the students need language to do things in the country they've moved to. Then we have private and in-company classes. Now these may be where teachers are sent by private schools or institutions to companies. It could be they're working as freelancers on their own account, or in our case, they are working as part of a cooperative. Now, we think that here Long's task-based language teaching is possible if the client can pay for it. If the client can be persuaded that this methodology is going to benefit the learners and they stump up enough money for the initial investment in developing needs analysis, identifying target tasks, etc., it can be done. However, this relates to point 3 actually. The smaller schools and institutions that might want to adopt task-based language teaching are often those that are sending students into companies, and if they don't make a concerted effort to adopt this approach, teachers are not going to have the resources to really implement TBLT in in-company classes. But also, let's think about the classes in-house, if you like, that smaller schools and institutions run. Can they adopt task-based language teaching? We think that they can, but it's more likely to be what we are calling a long light approach. That's to say that a needs analysis is performed, and it's essential really that schools change their approach to how they place students. Like, they place students based on a level test, usually a kind of grammar-based level test with some communicative stuff in it, but their command of structures determines often which class they go into. If they adopt task-based language teaching, they need to place students in class based on their needs, and that's where the needs analysis really is absolutely essential. Given the type of student that comes into a typical private language school, it's likely that they're going to be grouped based on generic needs. An example would be university-age students who perhaps are needing to do parts of their course in English, but the topics and their subjects, etc., will be quite varied. So this lends itself to more generic tasks, less specific than in the case of Long's TBLT. And underpinning that, and we'll talk more about this in a moment, needs to be a materials bank. That's to say, a database which houses lots of different generic types of tasks that teachers can adapt and use based on their students' needs. And of course, to do this properly, training is needed, because at the moment, teachers in most of these kind of situations aren't particularly skilled in how to implement this type of methodology. Finally, we think it's worth mentioning this as well. Teachers working in schools or on courses where course books are mandatory, and we think that teachers really can go against the grain and implement a kind of TBLT, lighter if you like, and even more compromised than number 4. We're calling this TBLT on the fly, and it involves really persuading learners. If you get a group of learners whose needs are sufficiently close that you can adopt a kind of task-based approach, doing a needs analysis even if it's not required by the institution, or at least checking on students' needs and requirements consistently as the course goes on, and then adopting a kind of dogma meets test, teach, test approach. And we'll have a quick look at that in a second.